Hello, and welcome to this episode of Leadership in Aviation. And boy, do I have a treat for you on today's podcast. Dana Williams is joining me today, and she is the founder of Dana Williams Consulting. She is a strengths finder, coach, and she's worked with Southwest Airlines several different times over her career. She was a senior advisor in the marketing department, which led to a little bit of a shift in her career. And I am so excited, Dana, to have you here today and talk with you about strengths in your own business, consulting business now, and also at Southwest Airlines. Welcome.
Yes, thank you for having me, Renee. It's so great to be here. And of course, I love all things aviation, and leadership. So happy spot for me.
Excellent. Yeah. So tell me a little bit, Dana, about what you were doing at Southwest Airlines and how that pivoted for you, because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, well, my story starts a long time ago. Actually, when I was 13 years old, my mother worked for an ad agency, and she told me she was working on a secret project, and she couldn't tell me about it until it launched. But she was actually the first female producer of a TV spot for a major airline. It was Southwest Airlines. So she produced the first, if you remember the female on the runway with the plane going over it that promoted Southwest Airlines even before they got off the ground. That's when I started hearing about this little company called Southwest Airlines from my mom. And I was like, oh, wow, that sounds pretty interesting. So I went to college, and several of my friends started working at Southwest, and I got married and I started working at Southwest as a flight attendant. So I flew for a year. And then I really got into the management. At 21, I became a leader and started hiring and training flight attendants. And then I got recruited into the people department and loved it. There were 3 of us. We were hiring everything from mechanics to pilots to flight attendants, and started doing a lot of training at that point in my career. And I was like, wow, this is fun. And then my husband and I moved to Nashville. So I left Southwest for the first time and became a marketing director. I had some retail background and some marketing background. So I became a marketing director for a development company, and then came back to Southwest Airlines in marketing. So I spent the majority of my career in marketing at Southwest, but I had done hiring, training, and a little bit of the operations. So by the time I got into marketing, it was really fun to help launch, went through several acquisitions, managed the brand when we would go to new places like Boston, and they called us Southwestern Airways. They didn't know who we were. And we were like, you don't know Southwest? And opened California, worked on the AirTran merger, worked on growing into Hawaii, just all through my career, helping grow the brand. Well, as a leader at Southwest Airlines, it was very important to develop our people and retain and keep our people. So one of the things that happened in my third stint as a employee at Southwest Airlines, I actually was there 3 times and left each time to do something different and grow in my own capacity. And the third time I was there was like 2009 till 2020. And at that point, when I came in, it just came after the Great Recession, and we never let anybody off as far as let them go, but we needed to come up with a creative way to have people take a break from Southwest so that we didn't have to lay off. So we did what was called Freedom 09. And people could take off for a couple of years, go do their thing, and come back if they wanted to. And that was our way around the recession. It was during that time that we had to do a lot of reorging in the marketing department. And I started learning about strengths and Clifton Strengths. At the time, it was called Strengths Finder. It's now called Clifton Strengths. And we wanted a quick way to help really know our people and help engage them and help them be their best every day. And no matter what they were doing, our leadership role is 80% developing people, right? So how do we give them a tool that helps them know themselves and as a leader know what they are? So when I came across strengths, I was like, oh my gosh, this is a really powerful tool. Because what you learn is that once you get your Clifton strengths, you're 1 in 33 million. So you're not going to find too many people that have the same strengths in the same order you have. So I quickly became a coach. Southwest paid for me to become a Clifton Strengths coach. And there was 2 of us in the marketing department, and we were the only coaches in the whole company. At that point, I think we had 60,000 employees. And we started hearing from other departments within the organization that they wanted to do what we were doing because we were retaining and engaging our employees. And so we would help them on the side, and had an amazing leader who let me spend 20% of my time coaching and helping the other departments, and the 80% marketing. So I felt like at that stage in my career, I had already done everything there was to do at Southwest. And so I felt like it was a perfect time for me to come in and be that coach. And then in 2015, Gary Kelly said, you know what? He was our president CEO at the time. He said, I want to be a strengths-based organization. What do we need to do? So I got called in to help work with our Southwest University and with our HR department and the executive office to help develop a plan in Gallup. And we developed a plan and a roadmap to bring Southwest up to speed as a strengths-based organization.
Oh my goodness. Just out
That's
of
a
those
long
last
story.
out of those last 2 sentences, I have so many questions. Oh my goodness. So for 6 years, you were doing this from a grassroots level.
Absolutely.
You were really working it and working in your strengths, which what are your top 5?
So thank you for asking. So my number 1 is ideation. Number 2 is strategic. So I like to look at the big picture and put the puzzle together. Number 3 is futuristic. So I'm always looking at the future. And number 4 is maximizer, taking things from good to great. And number 5 is individualization. So customizing how I'd coach you and Amy versus it's all going to be different because I'm customizing constantly. So when I found my strengths, I had just gone through this horrible personal thing with my husband. We'd been married. We're now married 43 years, but we had been married for 26 years and we were not in a good place. And I was really working on myself. And once I found my strengths, I was like, oh my gosh, I have these talents. Why didn't anybody ever tell me this? Why didn't I know this when I was younger? And so I became really passionate about helping other people birth their purpose through their strengths. And it's become
And
my
so
job.
this is something that you saw your coworkers at Southwest use both professionally and personally. It really improved their life.
Absolutely. Because we always look at the employee holistically, right? We can't look at them as, oh, they're just this leader. And especially now during COVID and people at home, they're managing their families and their business. So how do we guide them with their strengths, and how do we help them get that energy? Because when we're using our strengths, we're really energized. The days we're not using is the days we're kind of drained. So
that's so true. You also mentioned something that I've found to be fairly unique to Southwest Airlines, and I think it's an amazing culture builder, and that's Southwest University. And so I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what that sub-organization within the airline does, because I've met some people who are involved in that. And I think it's just so unique. I'd love for our listeners to hear a little bit more about the vision for that.
yeah. So in the past, it was always, HR doing the training and development. And probably, I'm guessing it was about 25 years ago, they kind of moved into this Southwest University, and it had different names. And I think when we did our rebrand in 2014, we were doing rebrands across the company. And that was one area I think that was working on rebrand, and they came up with Southwest University and built this huge entire building for training and development. And it's become a place. And I was so excited. I almost had tears in my eyes. I think it was a month ago, Bob Jordan posted that they had 450 people come through Southwest University for their first day of work. And it was just exciting to see that people are coming back together. And it's not only a place, but it's an area that people come to learn and grow.
Right. And it's not just technical training, which is one thing that aviation is exceptionally good at. I mean, all of us who work on airplanes, fly airplanes, direct traffic, do quite a bit of technical training. But this is up a level. It's professional development. It's really honing soft skills to become a really great contributor to the organization, right?
Exactly. And not only, I think when back in my recruiting days when we were looking for a great pilot or a great leader or a great customer service agent, it didn't matter. Everybody needed to have customer service skills. And, we used to say, we're in the customer service business. We just happen to have airplanes. And I think that was, one of the mantras of Colleen Barrett. But it's true. And I think that you can't, you've got to have the technical training, but also give the employees the customer service opportunities to learn customer service training and all the training that go along with human development.
I love that. Well, let's talk. I want to shift gears just a little bit here, because one of the other questions I had for you was, how do you take something like Strengths Finders or Clifton Strengths, it's called now, and take that across an entire organization, especially one as large and as decentralized as an airline? How do you make sure that really gets through and is really implemented? What are some of the key takeaways for implementation of that? And then maybe some of the things that were really difficult to overcome because of those factors that I indicated.
I think when you see a tool like this and you're excited about it within your own department and you want everybody to use it, you have to have patience and know, we right away, we didn't get buy-in from HR. So thank goodness we had a really passionate leader who loved strengths, and that helped us keep going with it. And I'll never forget when we first started using it within our department and we had our first reorg and we used it for that. It was amazing because it's a development tool. It's not a hiring tool. And that's when we realized we had to shut off those other voices that even though we loved it and we were ready to use it, we couldn't get frustrated that the rest of the company wasn't ready to go there yet. And as you said, it's a big company. So, and not everybody's going to be excited about a tool. They have their own map of the world. So I learned to spend my time with the people that were excited about it and just keep using it and keep developing myself and those around me and not worry about other departments and other people because we do a lot of cross promotion. We worked with a lot of people. So we had a lot of teams, whether it was working on the MAX or working on opening Hawaii, we always had cross-functional teams. So for me, I was like, man, if I knew everybody's strengths, it would really help me. So I just slowly started using it in the groups that I could influence. And as those leaders came to me and said, can you bring this into, I had the director of in-flight come in and say, I want to do this with my leadership team. Can you come and so we'd go and work with his team and then they'd get a call and then it kind of slowly. And the neat thing was, and I think there was a gal that I worked with in this Southwest University who really was the person that helped us keep it going. And she liked the fact that we were using Gallup. We were looking between Gallup and another product that used strengths. And she said, I would go with the Gallup product. And so when I negotiated everything with Gallup, I ran everything through her. So I involved her from the very beginning, even though that team wasn't ready to use strengths yet. I just involved her all the way through. And then by the time we started, when Gary Kelly said, okay, I'm ready for us to be a strengths-based organization, that wasn't until 3-4 years later. And so she was ready, I was ready, and then Gallup was ready. And they were great about waiting as well. So I think it's that patience and saying, let me take care of the little circle around me, the hula hoop around me, and not worry about all those other things I can't control right now. And let's just help the people here. And then what happened was, before Gary even said, I'm ready to be a strengths-based organization, we started getting calls from other departments saying, we want to do this. So we'd help them. And then we all would meet once a month and talk about what we were learning and how we were using it. And then by the time he said, we're ready to do this, that's when her name's Angie from this Southwest University, and I started working with Gallup on building the roadmap and involved the executive office. And it took time. And that's what I tell people. And this is one of Herb's famous lines too, is leading is like managing a garden. You can't just put the plants in the ground and leave. You've got to constantly water, you prune, and so I just took care of my garden where I was. And as the garden grew, other people came along And then we started working together. And I was so grateful that my leader let me spend 20% of my time helping the other leaders do this, because it was something we just created, and there wasn't a position for this. So it was amazing.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So, and then COVID hit. So we got what we did and how we built it is Gary said, we're going to become a strengths-based organization. Then we brought in a kind of a roadmap and shared it with the executives. And we gave them, we built into the plan quarterly sessions with the executives before it even went to the other leadership groups. So even right now, when I'm working with other companies and help them become strengths-based, we always start with the leaders. So the entire company at Southwest right now is not strengths-based, just the leaders. It's just now getting into some big areas like ground ops, all the senior departments that like flight ops, they all are now strengths-based as far as their leadership, but not every single pilot, every single flight attendant. That has not happened. And because really focusing on the leaders is the most important right now.
Absolutely. So if you're looking at all of that information that's probably swimming around in your head about the strengths of great leaders in aviation or great pilots in aviation, what are some of the top strengths that you appreciate in those leaders that are particular to this industry, perhaps?
You know, that is a great question, because I think I'll go back to Gallup, and Gallup is the company that owns the Clifton Strengths Assessment. Dr. Clifton created it in the 50s. He bought the Gallup companies in the 90s. And then it's 6 decades of research. And so the reason I like it is that Gallup is constantly doing research and studying. So I get lots of data from them. Well, the data I have from Gallup is that there's no one particular job, like, okay, this is a pilot and this is the things that, if they have these strengths, this is great. But what we do know is there are certain talents that are in the top 10 across the world. So 26 million people have taken Clifton Strengths. So they have all that data. And we know that learner is high. We know responsibility is high. We know achiever is high. So those are some of the ones that you see quite frequently in the top 10 of people across the world. It doesn't matter what gender, what language, what age. It's just, you've had these your whole life. And so it's pretty exciting to watch and see. So the way that I used it during COVID was I pulled the whole marketing department's strengths together and found out that their number one strength was learner as a team. Well, then how do I make sure that we're teaching them things along the way as we're going through an unknown time like COVID, right? And so talking about the past and how we got through challenges, 9/11, things like that, that help them learn that you will get through this. Here's the things you can be doing right now to learn. And so it's looking, and this is my customizer coming in, my individualization, but it's coming in and looking at the grid of all your leaders and figuring out what they need during that time. And this as a leader, as a pilot, I mean, there's people that you just connect with and you can connect with them so easily. Well, I'm sure they probably have some kind of relationship talent. And that is the one thing I think that you'll see across the board at Southwest is we're humans and we love interacting with people. And so relationship talents are pretty high at Southwest Airlines. Regardless if you're a pilot or you're a flight attendant or you're a mechanic, there's a high sense of relationship there.
Oh my goodness. I can think of so many examples of that from the interaction that you have with flight attendants on Southwest, and probably a little more pre-pandemic when you could see people's smiles, which hopefully we'll be able to see each other's smiles forever and ever now. But just from that level and the humor that you hear over the intercom as they're making announcements to, knowing Chammy Jo Schultz and hearing her story about how when she landed Flight 1380 and walked through the cabin and greeted every single passenger and thanked them for their patience during this time that that was unprecedented crisis in an airplane for each one of those passengers. So just seeing all of that, knowing when we were doing work on this FAA Women in Aviation Advisory Board, and we actually met in a fairly empty Southwest Airlines headquarters building, using the conference room so that we could have social distancing, and having Gary Kelly come in and greet us and thank us for being there at that time is a great example of all of those relationship skills at Southwest. So you say that, and I can tell you for sure as an interactor with the company that I've felt that. So I think that's really an interesting observation, and one that I think is really important. I was furiously taking notes as you were answering my question, and one of the biggest things that I heard you say, and probably the most important, is that you have to have patience in the process of changing or enhancing the culture in an organization. I heard you say that you led by example. I heard you say that you surrounded yourself with the people who were like-minded to you, that you were influencing and helping the people who were bought in before you tried to go out and influence the people who weren't seeing the same things that you were seeing. I heard that you found an advocate in HR for this, and that you worked with her early and often, and then progressed. I heard you say that you built community around this idea, that you were meeting monthly with these leaders who were also interested in strengths, and then ultimately that you found a top leadership advocate who wanted to push this through the entire organization in Gary Kelly. So I think that there were so many lessons that we could learn from that. What, just devil's advocate a little bit, what do you feel like has been the biggest impediment to getting this all the way down throughout the entire company?
I think timing, because we were on a big roll. We had just certified 57 coaches. They had gone through the Gallup training. We had also worked with the Southwest University, and they had gotten, I think there was 6 of our training facilitators trained in how to lead with strengths. And we had monthly meetings going. We were doing some awesome things, and on a pretty big growth trajectory when COVID hit. And of course, everything stopped, any kind of training, any kind of, so and it was about that time in 2020 that I decided, I had been planning at some point that I would go out on my own and coach. And I said, okay, this is the time. So we had about 10 of those coaches that had decided to leave Southwest. So I kept them in my purview and kept them together. And then the other coaches still stayed together, and we still stay connected with Angie. She's still very involved in growing the coaching there at Southwest. And I think the hardest thing was when it had to stop, because the funding stopped, everything kind of stopped, and that's hard. But I didn't let that stop me from continuing to use it. And in fact, in our department, we came up with strengths and resilience. And how do you have strengths? How do you get resilience with your strengths during COVID? We also came up with strengths at home. We brought in our employees and their spouses or partners on Zoom, and we gave them the opportunity to do strengths together as a married couple. We just pivoted during that time and said, okay, well, we can't do this right now with the company. What can we do with our people right now? How can we help them through this time? So that was pretty exciting.
I love that. So what do you do within Dana Williams Consulting? Obviously, you're doing some strengths exploration.
Yeah.
What else do you do? And I think you're working with companies outside of aviation as well. Tell me a little bit about that.
So, so I've got a few healthcare, beauty. I've a few people in the beauty business. I've also got some in the energy business that I'm working with. So kind of just, if you're a leader and you're running a department and you want to get your team connected, strengths is a great tool. And so I get hired by companies to come in and help lead a strengths movement within their organization. Even if it's like right now, I'm working with the energy company. The whole company's not ready to do it. So I'm just working with a small department and helping them get strengths based. And same with healthcare. And I'm okay with that because I know when they see the retention that they're getting and the engagement that they're getting with their people, it's because of strengths. And right now, we know that 46 million people left their jobs in 2021. But they didn't leave to just quit and not do anything. They're moving around. So we're calling it the great reshuffling. So you might be a leader. I know I've gotten several of these calls this week from leaders who have left their current role as a vice president, a director, wherever, and they've gone to a new company. They've got recruited away. So how do you go into that new company and tell your story, your brand story with your strengths? How do you assimilate your team quickly? How do you get your group to be engaged? And so I have a whole program for that called Leader in Transition. And I'm working on that with a lot of leaders right now, personally for themselves and then for their teams. And then I'm also working with individuals. I have a boot camp, which is transform your life from the inside out. We start with strengths, and then we work on their personal mission statement and their branding, and kind of bringing together strengths and branding so that if they're going to be out there promoting themselves or joining a new company, how do they show up? And it's just so I always tell people, put your strengths on your resume. It helps that person interviewing and have that discussion about, this is what I'm good at, and this is what I do every day. So those are the two people I serve, the individuals in transition, and then the corporate leaders who are disconnected and want to get connection with their people and with their teams.
I love that. And if you were going to estimate how much this methodology or tool really helps with retention, and I would dare say engagement, what do you think the multiplier of that is, or the increase that you see from a practical standpoint by using strengths in management?
That's great. When people are using their strengths every day, they are 3 times more engaged. And what we do know is that when teams use it, they're 6 times more engaged. And it's not about, we're in a hybrid environment now. People are not, even at Southwest and headquarters, not everybody's coming back every day. Major companies are coming up with a hybrid time. So how do you connect and retain your people as you're managing in a hybrid? Well, strengths is the key, because when you know your people, it's like you have an X-ray on them and you get kind of, okay, this is Renee. She's adaptable. So she's going to be okay with this change, but I need to make sure that she understands the why behind it. It's creating your communications. And there's 4 things that we learned from Gallup. Again, this is why I love working with Gallup, is that there's 4 things that followers need. And they need hope, they need trust, they need compassion, and they need stability. So if you're a leader right now connecting with your people, I would make sure you have all 4 of those woven into your communications. And I use Gary Kelly, for example. I used his letters a lot during COVID, because he would say, we don't really understand what's going on now, but you can trust me to tell you, as soon as I know something, you're going to know it. And he'd point to the future. Here's where we're going. And here's what this is going to look like. So there's his, stability. We've got enough money in the bank. Mm-hmm. And then I know this is hard for you, and I get it. There's his compassion. Mm-hmm. So it's giving, and it's so easy to do, but as leaders, there's so much going on in our minds every day, leading an organization, making decisions. Burnout is huge right now with leaders. They are having as much burnout as a frontline health worker, because they're having to make decisions so quickly with not a lot of information. And so,
right. And what I found in all of my coaching that I was doing during COVID is that leaders were having to manage all of the same issues at home that many of their employees were having to manage, and then also provide that compassion and stability and trust and hope and accelerated or additional communication internally and externally with shareholders, with spouses. And it was so heavy that I think a lot of leaders are depleted right now. And you mentioned this early in our podcast, that one of the antidotes to depletion is working in your strengths. And so I think that that's one thing that leaders really need to be leaning into right now is how do they replenish their own spirit or soul or energy during this time of coming out of this crisis, and maybe even moving into another one with the inflation and the interest rates and the political unrest that we're seeing in the world right now. So it's like we're going from one to another, and they're compounding right now. And what I'm hearing you say is that strengths may very well be the answer to having that employee engagement and retention that will just help leaders return to the solid ground from which they've led in the past.
Absolutely. And one of the things that we brought out last year that I've been doing with all my clients is well-being at work. So there's 5 areas of well-being that Gallup identified like 15 years ago, and they did research across the country. What are the things that people need to have a good well-being? And it's social, physical, financial, career, and community. And so when you're looking at all of that, it's like, I think this is something we can all do as leaders with our people, is actually once a week, ask them to say between 1 and 10, where are you in these areas? And there's a book that Gallup came out with during the pandemic called Career Wellbeing. It says, like, for example, for me, I loved working out. My husband and I used to go to the gym together every day, and they closed the gym. So my physical well-being was suffering. And I didn't realize that until I quickly gave myself a score on that and realized, I was a 6. Well, 7 is thriving. So then I started putting that into my daily plan. What can I do during this time? And so it's really that self-management of understanding what's going on with your career well-being, what's going on with your social, your physical. We need 6 hours of social a day. Can you imagine? That was the research, 6 hours. And it's okay. You and I talking like this on Zoom, that's part of that 6 hours. Texting, but sitting and watching Netflix by yourself, that loneliness, that's kind of scary. So who in my purview, who in my leadership realm is lonely right now? Who do I need to reach out to? Who is alone by, like you said, living by themselves? Their lifestyle, you might not know what's going on. I need to make sure they're doing okay with their well-being. So as leaders right now in this new hybrid, it's very important to check on their well-being. You don't have to be a counselor, a doctor, or coach, but just asking a few questions and putting it into your weekly or bi-monthly meetings is really helpful. So I encourage that.
Oh my goodness, I love that. Now, you've developed a journal or a planner that really helps people with this. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's called the Strengths Journal. And it was when I was at Southwest in 2018 that I came up with this idea. I was like, I'd work with a team and I'd go, how do I know they're going to use this every day? Because really, it's about the daily use of your strengths that helps you make a difference in your life. Because it's not about managing your time, it's about managing your energy. And we're energized when we're using our strengths. And so I went to Gallup and I said, hey, I have this idea. Why don't y'all have anything like this? And they're like, well, you can create it. We'll license you for it. So they did. And it's really great. I have a team coaching group. We go through this. I also use it in all of my coaching. But basically, you write down your top 10 strengths and what you bring in your need at the beginning of the journal. And then we work on your core values. A lot of people don't know their core values. And so what we find is when you find your core values, they kind of knit and match with your strengths. And you see, oh, this is how I make decisions. This is how I do life. This is how I process things. And so identifying those. And then we work on a mission statement. And this is your personal mission statement about what you're about. And then we get into goals. And then every day it's like you're planning, what my desired outcome for today and why. And the 3 things I'm going to do today, not the 25, because most people are achievers. They get energy off checking off the list. But what happens is we get frustrated because we're just moving that list from day one. We keep moving it over. And then we're like, feeling like we're not accomplishing anything. So how cool is it to have 3 things that we're going to accomplish each day? And you intentionally go after those 3 things. But in the journal, you apply one of your strengths to help you get that done. So,
oh my goodness, I love that. I work from a big 3 every day, and I do that in a full focus planner, but I didn't think about applying my strengths to that. I am learning so much today, Dana. I really appreciate you being here. As we draw this podcast to a close, are there any parting thoughts that you have that you want to leave our listeners with? Or is there anything that we didn't cover that you think is really important?
Well, I just want you and your listeners to know how valued they are. I think so many times we go through life and feel like we're not making a difference and we're not connected to something bigger than ourselves. And I think I like this tool of strengths, Clifton Strengths, because I think it helps them see that they can't compare themselves with other people. Comparison is a thief of joy. I just got off a call with somebody right before this who was comparing I said, we're going to change that mindset. We're going to work on you and what you bring to the world. And we've each been created for a purpose to be here. And how sad if we don't get to use that. I think I got to share with you that my mom's graduating in 2 weeks at 85 from SMU. And she had this dream of always getting her degree and worked her way up, as a vice president of an ad agency, did all that stuff, but never had her degree. And so she's fulfilling that dream. So you're never too old to fulfill the dream that you've been created to be here for. So I want everybody to know how valued they are. And if they're not feeling valued, to know that there's coaches out there, there's people out there that can help them discover their hidden talents and unlock them. And that's what this is about.
I love that so much. Dana, thank you so much for being here. Obviously, people can get in touch with you at danawilliamsco.com, but how do they follow you on social media or connect on LinkedIn?
Sure. I'm Dana Williams Co. on LinkedIn and on Instagram. And and we I'm happy. I do LinkedIn Live every 2 weeks. We're talking about this great reshuffle right now. So you can follow me there. And I'm just thrilled and honored to be with you today, Renee. And thank you for all that you're doing in the aviation world. And I love the fact that you got your pilot's license. I just think that is encouraging. It's something been in the back of my mind for a long time, but I love that you did it. So
it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life because I did it in such a short time frame and at somewhat of an advanced age, 4 weeks of time in my 51st year. So
I love it.
Super fun.
That is what we want. We want those stories. People need to hear that you can do whatever you want to do, no matter what age. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. And for those of you who are listening today, we would appreciate you sharing this podcast with others, rating it wherever you listen to it, and following the Aviation Collective on social media, that handle on all of the social media platforms. Thanks so much.